Welcome, Gremlins, to the Game Grotto. Welcome, Gremlins, to the Game Grotto. Welcoming
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the Game Grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare
now
to
tap
play.
that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Game Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins on the scene.
We would be honored if you would join
Game
us.
Gremlins on the scene. Game Gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Game
We would be
Gremlins,
honored
come on, let's go.
if you would join us.
Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow.
Gaga Grumps says Crystal in the
Gremlins on the
house.
scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart.
Now tap that
Gaga
screen.
Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Now tap that screen.
Thanks for the follow.
Gang Gremlins on the
Grump
scene.
says it Crystal morning.
Crystal says at Grumps morning.
Gaga Grumps says who's ready to Wordle.
Crystal says at Gaga and Grumps.
Grump says it not Tracy's daddy higher.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Grump says it Daisuke, higher.
Natra's daddy says here.
No, Tracy's daddy says it Grumps high,
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Why? Crystal says OMG. Gaga Grumps says Ryan in the house.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Grump says why no Q.
Gaga Grumps says Blossom in the house. Thanks for doing your daily heart.
Diello Som VXZ says yes, it's the best letter Y.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Hello, Som VXZ says at Daisuke, dot span.
Like a thumb, race to the top, like a thun, tap and don't stop, like a thun, who will be crowned like a thun.
Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Y please Ryan.
DLO some VXC says that I'm sad my dog died, stop spamming.
Gaga Grumps says youth you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow tea in need of a home.
Usam VXZ says trial.
Gaga Grumps says train fits.
Below some VXZ says tired.
Gaga Grumps says T moved into number 1 Wordle Street R and I need homes.
Grumps says at least Ulrich no.
Gaga Grumps says tired works.
Usam VXD says timer.
Gaga Grumps says we have an Is it a trap?
Grumps says tiger. Grumps says at Oliver_AFC higher.
Gaga Grumps says I see 3 options for 3 guesses, am I missing any? Gaga Grumps says mogul is a good shout. Gaga Grumps says timer it is.
Grumps says at Isaac high.
Benjamin is in the house.
Crystal says timer it is.
We would be honored if you would
Gaga
join
Grumps
us.
says Isaac in the house missed you dude.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says Rai in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
It's playtime!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps,
Gaga Grumps says do for Gaga. Share the live chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Gremlins, let's go!
Good game.
Team Gaga,
Good game.
Grumps says at K reporting hair.
Close on VXC says yes.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the greetings.
Grumps says at summer high.
Level up.
Hello, some DXC says Gaga, what's the time?
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Summer says at Grumps hello.
Gaga Grumps says we had a treasure box for this half hour.
BL0 some VXD says at Grumps hi Grumpy.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says summer in the house.
Level up.
BLO Sam VXC
Level
says
up.
at Gaga and Grumps, what's the time?
Grumps says at Crystal.
Summer says at Gaga and Grumps hey you okay?
Grumps says at BL0SM.VXZ hey hey.
Gaga Grumps says who leveled up.
Summer says at Gaga and Grumps Crystal.
BLO Sam VXC says at Gaga and Grumps me.
Crystal says me.
It's a LLL level up. Guessed it
Gaga
wrong,
Grumps says
guessed
level up
it
incoming for
right.
Crystal and
Now
Blossom.
here we are, another height. If support was legacy,
BL0 some VXC says at Crystal hey.
Level up.
let me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess this snap. Level unlocked, shout out chat.
Crystal says at BL0SS on .VXC here.
Level streak still alive. Wordle
Oscar says was watching Shelton up gold come my horse came last.
same time, same
Level
channel.
up.
Brilliant brains, remember that.
BL0SSOMVXZ says I'm a go at 4:30. Gaga Grumps says Oscar in the house.
Grumps says at Oscar off to the butcher with it.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Oscar says at Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Oscar says Envoy Alan is terrible.
Below some VXC says at Grumps Lafcree.
Stain says hi everyone.
Summer says at Grumps you okay?
Grumps says at Stain hey there. Welcome,
Gaga Grumps
Emma,
says we are
to Wordle
starting
with
with A.
Gaga.
B for Blossom.
BLO Some VXC says at Summer hey. That's my lucky letter.
Gaga Grumps says Stain in the house.
Crystal says at Stain here.
Summer says at BL0SS on.VXZ juice.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word. Summer says that summer nights.
Grump says it's summer very much though. Cheers. Yourself.
BL Som VXC says I leveled up and new comment for me.
Summer says at GrumpsIJS woke up again lol.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grump says it's summer coffee kind of is.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Summer says at Grumps yes.
BLO Som VXC says at Grump Snipe it.
Grump says at BL0SM.VXZ that's the Chatterbox Award.
BL0SSOMVXZ says at Grumps lol grumpy.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with B please Ryan.
Oscar says the leaderboard dislikes me.
BL0SSOMVXZ says at Oscar FR.
Grump says at Oscar nah, if anything TT.
Gaga Grumps says it certainly has its favorites Oscar. Gaga Grumps says bound you got.
VLO Some VXZ says at I stop spamming Zoxo.
It's a word to wipe out. No letters to shout. Wipe out.
Gaga Grumps says wipe out in the chat.
Rory says stat.
Oscar says crash.
DLO Some VXZ says at RI don't be rude girl X.
Oscar says at AOI no starting arguments now.
BLO Som VXC says at RII, I warning you girl you could be muted YK.
Grump says handbags at dawn.
Gaga Grumps says crash furs. Gaga Grumps says helpful Grumps lol.
BLO Some VXE says at ARI stop beefing girl no one actually wants to.
Blow Some BXE says spare.
Oscar says Stark. Gaga Grumps says I moved into number 3R and S are homeless.
Rory says sire.
Stain says well seriously, we all here to have a good time. Respect the chat and host.
Crystal says spare.
Rory says stare.
Gaga Grumps says Stark works.
Blow Some VXD says spark.
Stain says spark.
Crystal says spark.
Gaga Grumps says oh so close to wipe out to fireworks.
Oscar says, oh, how much of a letdown I am.
Grumps says snark.
Oscar says everyone was saying spark.
BL0SSOMVXZ says at Grumps no N.
Grumps says oh, never mind.
Rory says no, N.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says someone said start lol.
Good game.
Grumps says glad to see everybody is paying attention. You passed the test.
Rory says inactually delayed by ease.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game. Good game.
It's a live date.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Ra-da-da. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Get it in 3. It's do or die. Only in 3. A pretty
Gaga
sky.
Grumps says if you haven't done it
We
yet, grab
would
your
give
daily
honor
heart while I set up
if
the
you
next
would
game.
join us.
Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Da-da-da. Wordle with Gaga.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Emma in the house thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says oh dear Grumps is on a roll today, prepare.
Grumps says at Roman what word is that?
EUA and an 01 says drone.
Emma says dream.
Gaga Grumps says no problem Alex. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, D. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
EUA and NR1 says drone.
Grumps says at BDM underscore, a full man closing parenthesis, you all right there.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Everybody get down! It's a freaking sniper!
Gaga grumps, says Chris in the house.
The man says bake.
Notra's daddy says too late.
Gaga grumps, says Grumps steals Ryan's crown.
Notracy's daddy says that Grump's music was over law.
Gaga grumps, says Snipe crown is accepted if it comes before I announce the winner. Gaga grumps, says thing is gifts are lagged and I don't want people to pay for nothing. Gaga grumps, says your word starting with D.
Grumps says Dolly.
Gaga grumps, says Dolly you got.
Oscar says at Grumps you might have jinxed about my horse.
Grumps says it Luca Haya.
Notra's daddy says that Grumps Parton good singer.
Grumps says it Oscar why. Is it in the roast already?
Gaga grumps, says Whitehouse in the chat.
Emma says dream.
Oscar says it said it has collapsed on the walkway. Notra's daddy says quiet.
Grumps says it Billy Bob Jahaya.
Oscar says very unexpected.
Larry says stare.
Grumps says it Oscar.
Stain says quiet.
Emma says brave.
Gaga grumps, says Starefits.
Oscar says Grumps might be the ultimate jinxer.
Grumps says it not Tracy's daddy and the clone sheep.
Gaga grumps, says nice word Rai.
Rare says waste.
Emma says rates.
Gaga grumps, says we have an almost complete anagram.
Oscar says taste.
Gaga grumps, says oh he definitely is the ultimate jinx.
Notra Steady says paste.
Grumps says at Oscar you have no idea how close you were with that.
Stain says based.
Emma says that's delayed.
Oscar says waste, paste, taste, paste.
Gaga grumps, says paste to confirm Asta trap.
Emma says waste. Emma says waste.
Emma says taste.
Blake says waste.
Gaga grumps says trap confirmed. What are the options?
Rory says swept for filler.
Blake says waste.
Natras Daddy says twist.
Stain says BHTW.
Grump says it's CGA about 10 times already.
Gaga grumps says okay, 5 options need a consonant heavy word.
Blake says waste.
Blake says waste.
Gaga grumps says twice is good.
Blake says haste.
Blake says haste.
Natras Daddy says based.
Gaga grumps says haste or based.
Emma says taste.
Grump says at Ella cannot be waste.
Crystal says based.
Blake says haste.
Blake says haste.
Emma says taste.
Gaga grumps says based, it must be unless we're all blind.
Grump says cannot be taste.
Gaga grumps says GG gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Welcome, gremlins, to the game grotto. Welcome,
Gaga grumps says perfect use of filter to avoid the trap rules.
Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heartbeat. Share us round. Now tap that screen.
Gaga
tap it,
grumps
tap
says
it,
welcome
tap that
gremlins
screen,
to the
yeah,
game
tap it,
grotto.
tap it. It's
Take a
your
seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to
Gang
play.
gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Grump says at Billy Bob to have a good
Gang
day.
gremlins on the scene.
Gaga grumps says treasure box up if you need a toy at your daily heart.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it, tap it. Gang gremlins coming, let's
Crystal
go.
says I have to go now. Can't wait for your time change so I get longer.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it, tap it. Let's see those team stickers.
Gaga grumps says thanks for coming, Billy Bob.
Gang gremlins on the
Crystal
scene.
says but first.
Now tap that screen.
Gaga grumps says me too, Crystal. Have a good day.
Now tap that screen.
Grump says at Crystal last workday of the week. Have a good one.
Gang gremlins on the scene.
Grump says corgi butt FTW.
Shout! It's Cooper! It's Cooper! Wiggle butt, just a little mud with the wiggle butt. Gremlins say what? He's a corgi, don't you know? His name is Cooper, watch him go!
Crystal says okay, good day everyone, I love Cooper.
Not Tracy's daddy says that Christian's here explaining is in pinned videos.
Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining.
Stain says at Crystal have a good day.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the wiggles Crystal.
We would be honored.
Gaga Grumps
if you
says
would
if you
join
haven't done
us.
it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Level up.
Crystal says at Stain you too.
Chase says I arrived in time for a fever dream.
Gaga Grumps says don't like a wiggling mama shy. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart stain.
We would be honored.
Gaga
if
Grumps
you
says
would
let's
join
play
us.
Wordle.
Jay says Alexa pick me up, I'm scared. Grumps says at my dad dance ACC. Hi.
Level up.
It's a L
Stain says it, Gaga, and Grumps, you're welcome.
Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, there's a youth
Gaga Grumps says after a quick level up for Grumps.
with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess it's not. Level unlocked, shout out chat. New
Level up.
streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me thrive. Tomorrow we guess, same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart shy. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Not Tracy's daddy says QRPTSD lol. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, W.
Grumps says at not Tracy's daddy and still no cigar.
Eggs and Bacon says hey there Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says all those letters and still not on the nose Ryan lol.
Grumps says at eggs and bacon higher.
Gaga Grumps says eggs in the house. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like-a-thon, race to the top. Like-a-thon, tap and don't stop. Like-a-thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart eggs. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Thanks for the follow.
Grump says at Ella, don't spam.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W ples Ryan.
Grump says at 5flyers _ Colin O.
Gaga Grumps says someone sent the sticker, not the crown.
Natras Daddy says winter.
Grump says at Melihaya.
Gaga Grumps says winter you got.
Chase says do they.
Natras Daddy says my best name.
Gaga Grumps says or not because.
Natras Daddy says Ibs NVM.
Natras Daddy says white.
Gaga Grumps says white will work.
Eggs and bacon says spree.
Grump says I was wondering how long ITD take for someone to notice.
Gaga Grumps says nearly. A green E lives at number 5 Wordle Street.
Natras Daddy says at Grumps thinking about handbags and cigars.
Stain says slope.
Grump says at not Tracy's daddy there's a story there, I feel.
Gaga Grumps says no change 8 letters wiped from the game. Gaga Grumps says flume fits.
Stain says crane.
Gaga Grumps says we have a yellow U in need of a home.
Natras Steady says deuce.
Gaga Grumps says juice is spelt the other way round.
Natra's daddy says okay.
Gaga grumps says Budge is in the grid.
Eggs and Bacon says nudge.
Grumps says judge.
Natra's daddy says fudge judge.
Stain says nudge.
BLO Sam VXD says nudge.
Gaga grumps says I only see nudge and judge.
BLO Some VXC says judge nudge budge.
Gaga grumps says no B for Budge.
Good game.
Gaga grumps says I was on the right side of a 50-50. Gaga grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Chosen by fate, play a part, it's a live date. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga grumps says you do the daily Wordle. I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Get it in 3, it's do or die, only in 3. A pretty sky.
Gaga grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga. Da da da. A Wordle with Gaga. Ra
Gaga grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Natra's daddy says QR.
Gaga grumps says we are starting with A. A. Gaga grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned, like a thon. Fingers on fire.
Gaga grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grumps says it Layla higher.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Yanks 3R0319 says what is sniping?
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with a please, Ryan.
Natras Daddy says a duel.
Gaga Grumps says sniping is sending the live ranking crown gift to steal the crown off the leaderboard.
Grumps says at Lydia's spammy calm down.
Gaga Grumps says adieu you got. Gaga Grumps says fan club and top gifters only Lael. Have to send heart me to join.
Natras Daddy says apple.
Gaga Grumps says Wheel chose the right letter and we have an E in need of a home.
Grumps says at ill creative one higher.
Gaga Grumps says apple fits. Gaga Grumps says E moved into number 5 and L moved in next door.
Grumps says at Livia Wordle.
Gaga Grumps says angle works. Gaga Grumps says no change.
Grumps says amble then.
Not Tracy's daddy says amble. Gaga Grumps says amble is a good shout. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Welcome in, guys. Settle down. Grab your heartbeat. Share it.
Natras Daddy says that GG no do it in the word.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Gang Gremlins on the scene. Whoa, whoa. Gang Gremlins.
Grump says it. Gigi, say what?
Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Game gremlins coming.
Gaga Grump says play the box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Game gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grump says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next word.
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grump says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grump says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grump says we are starting with A. R.
Not Steady says oh no it does. R.
Gaga Grump says thanks for coming, Chris.
Says rival.
Gaga Grump says contrary the wheel is. Gaga Grump says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grump says it. Chris Marvin laters.
What creative one says hi?
Grump says it. Timothy Simon.
Gaga Grump says this is not today's Wordle. Gaga Grump says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grump says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grump says it. Chris Marvin Pat, he'll be back, if you please.
Gaga Grump says your word starting with R, please, Sophia. Gaga Grump says rival you got.
Not Steady says did I get put in cap jail again? Says I capped for 3-5.
Gaga Grump says looks like Ryan.
Grump says it. Not Tracy's daddy must have.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grump says creative in the house.
It's a Wordle wipeout. No letters to shout.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Can figure it out. Oh no.
Natras Daddy says damn at number 3 now lol.
Gaga Grumps says nothing wrong with a wipeout. Gaga Grumps says shown fits. Gaga Grumps says yellow O in need of a home. 9 letters wiped from the game.
Notris Daddy says that Grumps must have put the handbags on my taps while smoking Mipsa galore.
Gaga Grumps says poked works.
Natras Daddy says hoped.
Gaga Grumps says we have home the O and an E and have homeless P and D. Great word choice. Gaga Grumps says hoped is in the GRD. Gaga Grumps says yep, Chelsea had it in 4.
Not Tracy's daddy says oops, I messed up.
Gaga Grumps says so did I. Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps says that not Tracy's daddy multitasking on a Friday. In this economy.
Natras Daddy says I got the crown wrong, no jail.
Gaga Grumps says we're who right. Gaga Grumps says do the do for Gaga. Share the live chat the chat and shower her with roses and GGs. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next word. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says what
Good
letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat
Good
now.
Notris Daddy says at Grumps, good game.
Notris Daddy says STBC.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. P. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says creative back on top your word starting with P, please creative.
Well, Creative 1 says prank.
Gaga Grumps says prank you got.
Notris Daddy says why is it not counting me in the taps?
Gaga Grumps says yellow A and N in need of homes.
Grumps says it not Tracy's daddy the cigar smoke.
Gaga Grumps says must be throttling or something. Grumps suddenly jumped to top after. Gaga Grumps says can't be plural Charlie.
Grumps says at Charlie D number 61 no plurals.
Well, Creative 1 says manly.
Gaga Grumps says manly fits. Gaga Grumps says L moved into number 4.
Not trust Daddy says I guess.
Gaga Grumps says I guess isn't valid.
Not trust Daddy says LLL, I know.
Gaga Grumps says should we triangle again?
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
A Creative One says angle.
Face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga.
Not trust Daddy says fireworks.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Not trust Daddy says fireworks.
Not trust Daddy says fireworks.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga.
The creative one says you're already has that as a word.
Gaga Grumps says we guessed angle earlier but the word was amble.
Grumps says it MR. Illuminate higher.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
LL Creative One says oh, okay.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart MR.
Grumps says it MR. Illuminate doing fine, thanks. Your good self.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
A Creative One says I leveled up.
Level up.
Grumps says it ill creative 1.
It's a LLL level up. I guessed it
Gaga
wrong,
Grumps says then let's
guessed
party
it
for creative.
right. Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd spell wow. This level's ours. Come bow with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess this snap. Level unlocked. Shout out chat. New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me fry. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thon, race to the top. Like a thon, tap and don't stop. Like a thon. Who will
Gaga
be
Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
fingers on fire? Like a thon, gremlins don't tire. Like a thon, hearts be flying. Like a thon, gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with H, please Grumps. Gaga Grumps says thanks Izzy, nice to see you.
Grumps says 3-finger attack FTW.
Benjamin is in the house.
Well, Creative 1 says Grumps in the house.
Grumps says Holly.
Not Tracy's daddy says still not there lol. Gaga Grumps says Holly you got.
Well, Creative 1 says Notre Steady or in Tat jail still.
Gaga Grumps says L lives at number 4 Wordle Street and H needs a home.
Natras Daddy says child.
Gaga Grumps says child fits. Gaga Grumps says H moved into number 2. Gaga Grumps says can't be shell no second L.
Well, creative one says shale.
LL Creative one says or whale. Gaga Grumps says shale is what I would have tried next. Gaga Grumps says close.
Notress Daddy says shelf. Or Creative One says shelf.
Gaga Grumps says shelf it must be.
Thanks for the follow.
Good game. Good game.
A Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
A random star chosen by fate. Play a part, it's a live date.
A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily wording? I post mine on my page and would love you to share the results.
Grumps says at PH7.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Only in three, a pretty sky.
A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga. Da da da. A Wordle with Gaga.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says PH7 in the house. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Welcome Gleep Boys to Wordle with Gaga. Grumps says at Callum 1590 no.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. U. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thumb, race to the top. Like a thon, tap and don't stop. Like a thon, who will be crowned? Like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins define.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with U please Grumps.
Grumps says at Kevin is _cool 67 no. Grumps says urine.
Gaga Grumps says you're extracting the urine.
Natra's Daddy says at Grumps taken over. Law got me in the jailhouse rock.
Grumps says it at _64 nobody forces you to be here, Petal.
Gaga Grumps says Yellow E in need of a home. Gaga Grumps says table fit.
Grumps says at Not Tracy's Daddy I resort to the 3-finger attack. It appears to work, for now.
Notra's Daddy says no.
Gaga Grumps says B moved into number 3 and added a homeless L.
Grumps says at #brown 1234 no A.
Natra's Daddy says no E on 5.
Gaga Grumps says too late I'm blooming blind today.
The creative one says lobby.
Gaga Grumps says needs an E.
Grumps says at ill creative one needs E.
Gaga Grumps says label is a good shout.
Notra's Daddy says elbows.
Peanuts here!
Grumps says no A.
Notra's Daddy says elbow.
Gaga Grumps says I was shouted at. Right in my ear lol.
Natra's Daddy says no.
Grumps says deservedly so.
Gaga Grumps says elbow works.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's a performance and
Notra's Daddy says fireworks.
on her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with
Gaga
three.
Grumps says Wordle in 4. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Natra's Daddy says fireworks.
Natra's Daddy says fireworks.
From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Thanks for the follow. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says thanks for the rose creative.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Lady Scorpio. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, Z. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grumps says at H4R4Y no.
Lady Scorpion says zesty.
Tapping don't stop like a thun. Who will be crowned like a thun? Gremlin renowned like a thun. Fingers on fire.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Benjamin is in the house.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Miller in the house thanks for doing your daily heart.
Level up.
Grumps says at Millar Gaming higher.
Miller Gaming says at Grumps hey.
Millargaming says at Gaga and Grumps Hayek.
Millargaming says level 7 boom.
It's a LLL level up. I guessed it wrong.
Gaga Grumps says Grumps says the word.
Now here we
But
go.
first this level up for Miller.
If support was letters, you'd spell wow. This level's ours. Come out with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess this snap. Level unlocked. Shout out chat. New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me thrive. Tomorrow we guess same time.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Z, please, Grumps.
Grumps says Swati.
Gaga Grumps says Swati you got. Gaga Grumps says a yellow tea in need of a home.
Grumps says no wipeout. How disappointing.
Malargaming says trust.
Nope.
Gaga Grumps says treat fits.
Grumps says it General we, Valentino, no plurals.
A creative one says sheet.
Gaga Grumps says T moved into number 5 Wordle Street and E moved into 3.
Malargaming says chest.
Malargaming says sheet.
Gaga Grumps says if it's sheet I'm sorry.
Grumps says it creative one was right before.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says I lost some on fireworks then.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says I'm sorry creative.
Welcome,
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
gremlins to the game grotto. Welcoming guys.
Grumps says at Manchester 13 higher.
Grab your heartbeat, share us round. Now tap
A
that
creative
screen,
one
tap it,
says
tap
it's
it,
okay,
tap that
it's
screen,
all
yeah,
good.
tap it. It's your warm-up routine. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it. Gang gremlins come and let's go. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking, there is a pinned post on my page explaining.
Stickers flow.
Natra Steady says rat.
Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says no offense taken Manchester.
Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next one.
Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says pinned posts answers your questions.
Grumps says at D tilde V tilde P here.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says D in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, W.
Lattice Scorpion says hole.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts beat fly.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gremlins define.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W, please, Esther. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing
We
your
would
daily
be
heart
honored
jam.
if you would join us.
Natras Daddy says no crown.
Benjamin is in the house.
Esther My Shayla says white.
Jimmy says Jimmy.
Gaga Grumps says you have been deposed, Ryan.
Benjamin is in the house.
Jack Wright says it. Gaga and Grumps, welcome home.
Level
You had
up.
a great day.
Gaga Grumps says JME in the house, thanks for doing your daily heart.
It's a LLL level up.
Grumps says it Jimmy.
Guessed it wrong, you guessed it right. Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, you'd
Gaga Grumps says white you got.
levels ours. Come out with me now. Green.
Well, creative one says hands got tired
Didn't
grumps.
solve Wordle solo though. Support came in.
Jimmy says at Gaga and Grumps, you're most welcome.
New fandom levels.
Gaga Grumps says, but first is for Jimmy.
Jimmy says at Grumps, yes.
Grumps says it ill creative one. I had my fill for the day. Grumps says it jogi higher.
Gaga Grumps says a green E moved into number 5 Wordle Street.
Esther Michaela says place. Esther Michaela says place.
Jack Wright says close.
Gaga Grumps says place fits.
Jack Wright says place.
Gaga Grumps says no change, 8 letters wiped from the game.
Esther Michaela says it didn't fit.
Gaga Grumps says no P for trope.
Milargaming says broke.
Gaga Grumps says not sure Boone isn't a proper name.
Jack Wright says Boone.
Gaga Grumps says it is a proper name. Esther Michaela says broke. Gaga Grumps says froze works.
Jimmy says drone.
Jack Wright says froze.
Gaga Grumps says we added a yellow R.
Grumps says it heat 1 no O.
Malargaming says burn if it's a word.
Grumps says it Claudio Porter no R in P2.
Gaga Grumps says I don't think so.
Milargaming says damn it lol.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle says nope.
Milargaming says deer.
Jack Wright says scare.
Grumps says it Spurs _539 no A.
Milargaming says no A.
Oh, Creative 1 says Surge.
Milargaming says Bob Vermoinen Surge is a shout.
Lady Scorpion says serve.
Gaga Grumps says surge is a shout.
Milargaming says verse.
Malargaming says has to be verse.
Jack Wright says nerve.
Gaga Grumps says yet pattern shows verse.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Milargaming says do.
Don't let her loose! Grumps is on the buttons!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat. Gaga Grumps says time for one last game.
Benjamin is in the house!
Grump says it Chris Marvin, welcome back.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next bit.
Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the rose, Jack. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Milligaming says what shall I have for my dinner? Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Jack Wright says Gaga and Grumps, welcome, hope you had a great day.
Gaga Grumps says it's Friday, it's Chish and Fips Day.
Milargaming says it, Gaga, and Grumps very tempting.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Oh.
Look, Creative 1 says that Gaga and Grumps.
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Lada Scorpion says opera.
Race to the top like a thon. Tap and don't stop like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon?
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga grumps says your word starting with O please Miller.
Mila Gumming says Odo please.
Gaga grumps says Oda you got.
BLO Som BXE says the king is back.
Below Som VXE says roast.
Gaga grumps says yellow O and R in need of homes.
Lattice Scorpion says order.
Milargaming says roast.
Jack Wright says no O.
Nope.
Gaga grumps says oh I could go for a roast.
Miller Gaming says no D.
BLO Som VXE says that he's won.
The creative one says 1-0.
BLO Som VXE says sorry.
Gaga grumps says O lives at number 2 added a homeless S. Gaga grumps says sorry works.
Jack Wright says sorry.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga grumps says we're ending on fireworks for Blossom.
Good game.
Explode 'em on her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Milargaming says nice.
Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
Gaga grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet.
Gaga grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Jack Wright says, I got to go have a good night.
Gaga grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 p.m. UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga.
Grump says that. Jack Wright see you later.
Miller Gaming says have a great evening.
Gaga grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Jack Wright